Hello, hello everyone. Kimsey here. So glad to be here with you all on this Monday afternoon. It's fall. It feels like fall here in Colorado, and it's really beautiful. I love this time of year. So, I am hopping on to talk about something that might resonate with a lot of you, but maybe not perhaps with the weight that it should, or like really the idea of how to recognize some of the signs. And what I'm talking about is neurodegeneration, which is a really fancy way of saying brain decline, essentially. So, I will explain, of course, today what that is, what neurodegeneration is, symptoms as well as long-term concerns, and then why it's so important to start taking care of your brain like yesterday. I think for a lot of people, especially young people, we think like, oh, dementia, fading memory, difficulty with cognition, like those things happen later, right? I'll deal with that later. The reality is signs like that or degeneration starts decades before it's measurable on brain imaging scans. So that's why it's so important to start taking care of your brain now. And there's so much that you can do to preserve your cognitive performance, not only to enhance it now, but to preserve it as you age through all stages of life. So, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Kimsey Berkwin. I'm an integrative nutritionist in my online nutrition and wellness practice called Progressive Health and Wellness, where I work with ambitious men and women who are struggling with their mental or physical health by taking a root caused body mind approach to optimize their overall health and wellness. So, raise your hand. If you're watching this, you can either hit the like button, you can comment. If you've ever noticed some of these symptoms, foggy thinking, that can be usually the symptoms of brain fog are pretty obvious. My clients often, not often, but some will ask, they're like, I always hear that term. I don't know what it means. And I'm like, if you don't know what it means, then you don't have it. It's very obvious. So, foggy thinking, kind of just feeling like your mental processing is slow, like you're in a cloud, if you will. Do you forget what you were saying in the middle of a sentence or a conversation? Or if you're typing an email, did you forget what you were saying in the middle of a train of thought? Do you have difficulty find with word recall, right? The word is just right on the tip of your tongue. If it happens here and there, probably not a big deal. But if you're noticing this is happening more frequently, that can be a meaningful sign. Sorry, this plant is that can be a more meaningful sign. How about difficulty with understanding complex information that would have been easier for you to assimilate before? So, a good example would be, let's say you're learning about something within your career field, right? So, if I'm learning, taking a class on nutrition, and they're going through more complex information that normally you would have been able to retain or understand before, but now it's just not, you're just having a really hard time like connecting the dots, really making sense of it, easily distracted. That would be another sign. And actually, that in and of itself, easily distracted, more easily distracted. How about, do you ever walk into a room and forget why? Right? I'm sure a lot of us have done that. To some degree, that can be pawned off as if you're busy, right? So if you're juggling a lot of things in your mind already, and then you walk into this room and you're like deep in thought, that you may not have to think about neurodegeneration. But if you're just kind of like going about your day and you walk into a room to get something and forget why, maybe not. Are you looking for your phone, looking for your keys, and you're holding them? Did you put your phone or your keys in somewhere like the refrigerator? Do you forget where you parked your car when you go, to a store or something? Do you forget how to forget the direction that you're going when you're traveling a frequented route? So let's say you're going from work to home, or from home to, a park or a friend's house or somewhere where you often go, and you forget the path to get there. Do you forget what should be like long programmed information, like giving someone your address, for example, or giving somebody your phone number? Do you get easily overwhelmed, or do you find yourself easily irritated or frustrated or angry. These can all be signs of neurodegeneration. And I haven't even gotten into some of the physical health side of things, right? Like insomnia or having a slight tremor, a slight shake, or unsteadiness while you're walking. Are you considered do you kind of consider yourself like the clumsy because you trip and fall easily or you bump into things all the time? If you close your eyes, can you find your orientation in space? So if you close your eyes, can you find your nose, for example? There are plenty of other physical signs that can be, or can you close your eyes and stand on one foot? Can you stand on one foot in general? There are plenty of physical signs because, right, the brain controls not just the mental processing of things, but obviously our motor skills too. So there's a number of physical signs that can be attributed to this also. I'm just naming some of the more frequent cognitive signs that I see. So all of these, like I said, can be signs of neurodegeneration. So what is neurodegeneration? There's two ways that neurodegeneration can happen. We have neurons, which are brain cells, and neurons communicate with each other by sending electrochemical messages from one cell to the next. So one nerve cell will send an electrochemical message to the next cell. And that happens through this chain kind of domino effect, if you will. And that's how you transmit neuronal messages, in short. Now, I'm going to get a little granular here. Where two nerves come together is called the synaptic cleft. The space, there's a tiny space, they don't actually touch. There's a tiny space in between where one nerve's axon meets another nerve's dendrites. Now, those dendrites, the receiving side of the neuron, those dendrites have lots of different connections. So those dendrites can think of it like a tree, right? They have like the axon's kind of a singular, and then it meets the dendrite and it branches. The dendrite branches off where it would then meet another axon to the next cell and vice versa. So I want to get granular about that physiology, the anatomy, because I'm going to explain. So the two different ways that neurodegeneration can happen. One is by loss of brain cells, right? That's pretty cut and dry. One is by loss of brain cells. It used to be thought that we could not regenerate brain cells. Long story short, that's been disputed. We can. It's called neurogenesis. In the hippocampus and the olfactory bulb, we can, in fact, generate new neurons. The other way that neurodegeneration happens is by loss of those neuronal connections. So it's called dendritic pruning, where we'll see those dendrites, right? It's like a tree losing some of its branches. Those dendrites prune and that connection weakens. So now nerve cells it's like a telephone wire fraying, if you will, right? Nerve cells aren't communicating as effectively with each other. That communication weakens, and therefore whatever message they were going to send weakens. So in terms of memory, that's all that memory is. Memory is brain cells held together essentially in these connections. And so if that weakens and dissolves, then you lose the memory. But same thing with motor function, right? So it all depends on where in the brain this is happening. The frontal lobe, we're going to lose more of that executive reasoning, planning, ability to think, focus. The hippocampus will lose some of the memory. It all depends on where this is happening, where you'll start to see the signs of the decline. So what causes neurodegeneration? The brain is almost all, most of the brain is actually what's called glial cells versus neurons. So there's neurons, which are actual brain cells, and then there's glial cells, which are support tissue. You can think of it as the glue, which is what glial means. You can think of it as the glue that holds the neurons together. So for every one neuron, there are 10 glial cells. That's what I mean by the brain is mostly glial cells. And that is because neurons are very delicate. They're very, very sensitive to external and internal environment stimuli. Glial cells help support them. Glial cells can be microglia, which are basically the brain's immune system, so helps protect them from pathogens, from toxins. There are support glials, so like astrocytes, for example. Astrocytes help with blood sugar regulation in the brain, electrolyte transmission. So there's like kind of nutrient, if you will, support cells. There's oligodendrites, which help maintain the myelin sheath, that protective fatty layer that insulates neurons, which lets kind of like rubber around an electrical cord. It insulates and makes sure that transmission goes in one direction only and doesn't just, electricity scatter all the way throughout the brain. So there's different types of glial cells, in other words, and they're all support. If there's damage to the brain, there can be damage to the glial cells, and there can be damage, therefore, to the neurons. So, what are some of the big ways then, if our goal is to preserve the neurons, preserve our ability to grow new neurons, neurogenesis, and also preserve those neuronal connections, we obviously want to look at the environment, the greater environment surrounding the brain, and the greater environment of the glial cells themselves. How can we support the glial cells? How can we support the environment so that is contributing, supporting our brain and not taking away from it? Now, what are some of the main things that take away from our brain? Some big ones that are in your direct power. Diet, of course, right? Of course. You got to give the brain the raw material, and you don't want to give it the wrong material. You have to give it the building blocks in order to manufacture neurons and have that healthy transmission. And you want to take away from things that may be damaging that. So things that support it would be omega-3 fatty acids in general. I'm not going to get into the technicalities of fatty acid balance, saturated omega-6 versus omega-3, et cetera. But I'm just going to say, for simplicity's sake, quality fatty acids. So that would be things from whole and minimally processed foods, largely. Think of olive oil, coconut oil, nuts and seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, avocado oil. Animal fats are perfectly fine. Things along those lines. Fatty fish, phenomenal. So there's an emphasis there on omega-3s would be a particularly beneficial form of fatty acid. Going back to that myelin sheath, omega-3s are really imperative at maintaining the integrity of that myelin sheath. So, and omega-3s also act on the microglia cells in the body's systemic immune system. They have a regulating effect. They help balance. They help balance out the inflammatory response by acting on eicosanoid cytokines, et cetera. Oh my gosh, this plant's gonna drive me nuts. So there's couple different mechanisms by how omega-3s support the brain, structurally, physiologically, in short. So eating the good kinds of fats and reducing your intake of the processed. This is where we talk a lot about seed oils, right? So safflower, sunflower oil, cottonseed, canola, peanut oil, like those are some examples of the seed oils, soybean oil. You'll find those almost exclusively in more processed foods. Not entirely. There are still some great products that might have like sunflower oil or something in there. But by and large, you'll find them in the more processed foods. So fatty acids, huge. Whole foods in general, right? So next we go into Oh my gosh, I totally just blanked on the name of these. I keep wanting to say proanthocyanins, but it's not. That's just one. Polyphenols. Polyphenols. That's just one type of polyphenol. So polyphenols are really potent, powerful antioxidants that are found in brightly colored fruits and vegetables. So there's many different kinds of polyphenols. They're not really a nutrition, they're not like a calorie or a fat or something like that. They're their own subcategory. But again, they have anti-inflammatory benefits. They have so things like curcumin and resveratrol, those would be considered polyphenols. Blueberries, berries of all kinds. Again, all brightly colored fruits and vegetables will have polyphenols. Those protect against oxidative stress in the brain. So polyphenol, amongst other things. So polyphenols are really great. Very important. And then high quality protein. So our tissue is made of protein. Our neuron chemicals are called neurotransmitters. Those are made of protein, like dopamine and acetylcholine and serotonin. Like they're all protein derived. So high quality protein. I'm an advocate for animal intake, like animal protein intake. There are ways to do vegan vegetarian diets. I think you have to be very intentional about how that's done, like very intentional about how that's done so that you're meeting all of the complete protein needs, and eating enough of it. But I'm not going down that road. I'm just going to say protein in general, also very important. From ideally cleanly raised animals, right? Grass-fed, wild caught, all that good stuff, organic, etc. So diet is huge. Sugar, gluten is one of the worst things for the brain. That it's been shown to affect the blood-brain barrier. It has been shown, there's a whole book written about it called Grain Brain. It has been shown to, there can be a neurological autoimmunity in which gluten worsens neurological autoimmunity, just like it worsens virtually all autoimmune conditions. It degrades the integrity of the intestinal lining. So gluten can have a pretty profound impact on the brain. That's why I pull everybody I work with off of gluten, at least for a period of time, right? And then if we introduce it, I always advocate for having gluten-containing foods be more of a when in Rome food. So like if it's a special occasion of some kind, sure, enjoy it. But if you're just like at home on a Tuesday, don't make your wheat toast. You know what I mean? Um, so let's see what else. So those are like the what to eat. When also matters. So nutritionally, meal timing and meal spacing can make a big difference on our brain performance. The well, gosh, there's several things. So I wanted to talk about the like how blood sugar. That's where I'm going next. Let's just make that our next category. So we talked about diet. Let's talk about blood sugar balance. Blood sugar balance is critical. If somebody asked me, what is the best thing I can do to preserve my brain, to protect my brain nutritionally? I would say balance your blood sugar, hands down. So what that means is we want our glucose levels or blood sugar levels to be within a nice narrow range throughout the day so that all of our body has the fuel that it needs to perform all of its metabolic demands. The brain in particular is very sensitive to this. So too low of blood sugar is a physiological stressor. Too high of blood sugar is inflammatory. So that's why Alzheimer's is often referred to as type 3 diabetes. Too high of blood sugar, it creates that dendritic pruning. It kills nerve cells. Too low of blood sugar can too. So these blood sugar swings that so many people experience, it's nearly being normalized, are really damaging to the brain. And then especially if we're getting into like type 2 diabetes, et cetera, again, seriously damaging for the brain. Insulin resistance. The brain, like I said, is very sensitive to this. So reason being is because while glucose, the brain gets 20% of our glucose supply, the brain also is designed to run on ketones. Ketones have a very toning effect on the brain. It's a clean burning, high octane fuel. That's why nearly everyone that follows a ketogenic diet reports having more of that mental clarity, sustained energy levels during the day, etc. So, um, we're what it boils down to in a nutshell is our brain is designed to be what's called metabolically flexible, which means we can equally burn ketones, or which are fatty acids, or glucose. And ideally, we're mimicking how our ancestors ate, in the sense of we're kind of dipping between the two. We're kind of cycling in and out of the two. That's how our ancestors would have eaten, right? They weren't eating 3 square meals a day and 2 snacks and eating every 3 hours. They just weren't doing that. No animal does that other than the large mammals, right? The cows, etc. So, getting off my soapbox here. But one of the ways that I help my clients and that I have followed myself is strategic fasting. So I will have, if the person can tolerate it, can sustain it. There are some situations where this is contraindicated. But if a man or woman can sustain 16 hours of fasting overnight, we'll do that. That's one of my favorite go-tos. We'll do the 16 hours of fasting overnight. If not, then I'll do ideally get people up to 14, which I would consider more of kind of a digestive rest other than a true fast. Mm. So 14 to 16, and then start cutting out snacks basically. So spacing meals by 4 to 5 hours, because in that fasted window overnight, ideally, you'll probably start getting into ketosis in the morning hours. And that's what I mean by cycle in and out of it, right? So let's say your eating hours are from 10 to 8, I'm sorry, 10 to 6. Then from 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock, you may be getting into that ketosis stage. But then you eat, and you can eat 10 o'clock and then again at 2 o'clock and then again at 6 o'clock. So you're still eating 3 meals. I'm not saying cut calories. I'm just saying watch the timing. Make sure to eat the whole foods and the protein and all that stuff. And during that fasted period, we're really in like lowering our insulin levels. We're engaging in autophagy, which is the rebuilding of dead old tissue, and mitophagy, which is the rebuilding of dead old nerve cells. It can be, dead old mitochondria, not nerve cells. It can be very therapeutic, not only from a blood sugar sustainability perspective, but from a helping the body clear out debris perspective. So I'm a big advocate for strategic fasting in populations that can tolerate it. Okay, so next, as far as environment goes, then we look also at like your exercise levels, sedentary lifestyles versus not. Exercise is one of the best ways to stimulate neurogenesis. The reason being is it increases brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is needed to stimulate the formation of new brain cells. So, and that arborization, which is the expansion of those dendrites. So, exercise phenomenal for, and if you can do it outside, even better. But sedentary lifestyles do the exact opposite. Routine. Routine is another thing for environment. Like doing this, not challenging your mind is what I mean. Not challenging your mind, not learning new things. It can be little stuff, right? Take a different route on your way to work. If you go on a walk every day, take a different route sometimes. Try writing with the opposite hand. Do brain games. Learn language on Duolingo. Play challenging games like chess, or things that require thought. Like it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just challenge your mind in some way. Then there's also more like kind of what I consider meta environment things. So your gut health, your stress levels is huge. The quality of your sleep, the quality of your relationships. What about toxin exposure? Do you smoke cigarettes? What about like, is there mold in your home? Could you be exposed to heavy metals? Do you filter your water? Do you take medications? Right. So there's like meta environment things. And then there are like your daily, what I would consider your daily environment. Did I say hormone balance in that other one? So what all of that to say, that's why I started with some of the best things that you can do for your brain. Look at nutrition, look at your physical activity, breath work, huge. Breath work is amazing for stress. It's one of my favorite methods for managing stress. You can start by listening to an app. You can start by just box breathing, 4-second inhale, 4-second exhale. You can start by prolonging the exhale, 4-second inhale, 6-second exhale. Set your timer on your phone for 5 minutes. Like, again, doesn't have to be complicated, but consistency is what matters. So I think starting with those daily things that you can do, start to incorporate. And then with my client, so I shared a post about my client Sandra, it's a pseudonym, client Sandra, who came in. She was 63 years old, lived an active lifestyle, happily married, has a grown son, but she and her husband were both noticing, and she has a history of family history of degeneration. And they were both noticing like she's repeating herself often. She's having to ask for reminders often. She's having to write things down in order to remember them. She's getting a lot more easily overwhelmed. Like she was showing a lot of the classic signs. And in that post, which is on my Facebook page and also in my Facebook group, I go through exactly what we looked at in her blood work and her stool test and what we did to get her back, her memory back, her performance back. And she and her husband both noticed improvements by the end of it. So I'll wrap this up by talking about some supplements and then kind of what the whole process ideally looks like. So supplements, some of my favorites, magnesium threonate, amazing. It's a form of magnesium that easily crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it has a very protective effect on the brain. It helps prevent or slow neurodegeneration. Also, just like magnesium in general, helps with sleep and calming the nervous system and helps with like cognitive performance and memory. It's phenomenal. Magnesium threonate. I also love omega-3 fatty acids. Make sure that you're taking a combined dose of EPA and DHA that is above 1 gram, above 1,000 milligrams. Obviously, talk to your doctor about this. There are contraindications if you're on blood thinners, certain medications. So this is not medical advice. Putting that out there, it's not medical advice. Always talk to your provider first. Vitamin D, because of how it modulates the immune system. And then we can get into nootropics. So things like lion's mane and phosphatidylserine, really great, especially for stress. Alpha GPC, phenomenal for supporting acetylcholine levels in the brain, which is great for like working memory and attention and focus. So there are some targeted nootropics that we can use. Nootropic meaning brain or cognitive supporting supplement. And then lastly, so like I said, what I was starting to walk you through, the process that I would take on this is start with the fundamentals, right? Start with nutrition, the exercise and movement, the stress management, the targeted supplements. And then from there, we get more and more granular based on your unique case. So does it seem that gut health is driving more of the neurodegeneration? Could it be that hormones are? Could it be that mold exposure is? Could it be that stress is? That's where we really take a more nuanced approach, and we'll run the right lab tests, and we'll implement and really start to address each of the phases necessary based on what you uniquely need. But my advice to you, if you're listening to this now, is don't delay it. Don't write this off. Don't write off the forgetfulness, the declining memory, the fogginess. Please don't write it off as age. Please don't write it off as stress. Like, it's better to look into it and get on it now, because your brain, like, you could add so much life to your years, literally adding your ability to form memories with your loved ones and work for as long as you want to and enjoy life as long as you want to, and staving off some of the more serious and scary potential diagnoses like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So it's totally preventable, in other words. That's my whole point. Okay. I hope that helped. If you want to learn more or if this resonated with you, or perhaps you're thinking of a loved one, I do offer free 15-minute discovery calls. Just gives us a chance to talk on the phone, talk more about what your health challenges or goals what you're looking for. If it feels like a good fit, great. We'll talk about what next steps look like. And if not, that's okay too. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.